the first panel of the conference, which is a CEO panel that's going to be focused around the themes you've just talked about. So if I could ask perhaps my co-panelists to join me on stage, we'll go straight into the panel discussion. Thank you. Please. Thank you. Please. So let me perhaps begin by just introducing my panelists here. So first of all, it's my pleasure to introduce engineer Saeed Khalfan Al-Ghafri. He is, of course, a driving force behind the success of Emirates Steel, and he's got 17 years of industry experience, and he's played a pivotal role in driving the key expansion markets that the company is focused on. He's a chemical engineer by profession and holds an MBA from the University of Strathclyde in Scotland. So please welcome Saeed Al-Ghafri. Okay, let me go to my right and introduce, please, Harsh Shetty, who is the CEO of Jindal Iron and Steel. He has got 20 years of industry experience and has been a game changer in the region's steel industry. He's known for his commitment to sustainability. So please welcome Harsh Shetty to the panel. Thank you. Moving back on my left and to the left of Saeed, we have Rafik Dow, who is the chairman of Litat Group and vice chairman and managing director of Saab, Mayer and Suez Steel Company. And he is a visionary in the steel industry. He started his career at Litat as a graduate, but of course today is the chairman of the group and is a major conglomerate that operates out of 6 different countries. He has, of course, transformed Suez Steel into a 2 million ton per year integrated steel complex. So again, please welcome Rafik to the panel today. Thank you. And next we have Rewant Ruia. He's a key player in SR's global strategy and operations, and he has an MBA from Stanford. His focus has very much been on green technology investments and has been driving SR's transition into the next era. So again, join me in welcoming Rewant to the panel. Thank you. And then, last but never least, a regular at this panel, of course, is Mr. Ravi Singh, CEO of Saab. Again, he's a seasoned steel professional. He has 32 years of steel experience in the industry and currently heading the show at Saab in Bahrain, as well as the operations in Saudi Arabia. And his journey includes leadership at Tata Steel, SR Steel, and also has a degree and an MBA from IIM Calcutta. So again, thank you, and please welcome Ravi to the panel today. So to begin, obviously, one of the key themes have been decarbonization. So I'm actually going to go straight into that and just ask each of the panelists who wish to comment in terms of some of the big steps and initiatives that are currently underway in your operations around decarbonization. So maybe I will start with Saeed.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Let me just say that I've been coming to this conference since 2007, and this has been one of the showcase of the event. I remember I was seeing this first session as a kid when I was in Mexico. I was very impressed, and I also made fun of some of the panelists at that time. So very grateful to be here. So thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. We have actually, when you look at, for example, decarbonization, let's say 2-3 years ago, we actually didn't talk about sustainability as we are talking about it today. I think today, specifically this year, everyone's talking about decarbonization. Everywhere I go, they talk about sustainability, they talk about ESG,
Great, thank you. Harsha, why don't you comment on some of the initiatives being taken at Jindal Shahid?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be in this August conference. Thank you, Raju, for having me. Yes, we firmly believe that the future of the enterprise is green, and so is the color of steel, given that 8% of the global GHG emissions is contributed by steel. So this is not just a paradigm shift in the making, but it's a tectonic shift which is going to hit the industry by 2030. And we at Jindal Shahid, we are a part of the Vulcan Group, and we are building a 5 million ton green steel facility in Dukum. It's going to be a green hydrogen ready steel plant in the hub of the green hydrogen ecosystem being created by the government of Oman. And at Jindal Shahid, which is the operating company, we are at 1.48 tons of carbon dioxide emission per ton of steel versus the global average is 2.32. And this is primarily because of our operational efficiencies, of course, apart from being a clean natural gas DRI technology, but also the operational efficiencies which have contributed to this. We are also investing in some breakthrough CCUS technologies, which aims to reduce the cost of carbon capture by 40% compared to the current levels, which would make it feasible at a larger scale. So it's going to be a pilot plant. So in short, we are preparing for a low carbon footprint future, and we expect to be amongst the first deliveries of physical green steel into the key markets by 2029 to 2030.
Great, thank you. There's in fact a few follow-up questions I have for you on that, but we'll come back to that in a moment. Rewant, would you like to go next?
Thank you very much, Raju. Really, it's a pleasure to be a part of this conference and to meet all the different industry leaders in the Middle East that are basically driving this change. Really, as I saw, we've been in the steel industry for the last 30 years, and we've been working closely with the government of Saudi Arabia and various industries to build a new 4 million ton flat steel complex, new steel flat steel complex in Ras Al Khaimah in Saudi Arabia. This will be with 5 million tons of DRI. And as Richard said, we're also going to be hydrogen ready. And really, we're very encouraged with all the developments that are going on in the region that can really enable the Middle East to really be the leader in steelmaking and in green steelmaking. And there is this opportunity where we are already, as an industry, within these much more carbon, have a much lower carbon footprint than the rest of the world. And really, it is up to the region to really capitalize on this and drive this change so that we can continue to set the leadership example for green steel making. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you very much for that, for his opening words. Rafik, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me the chance to voice out. This is my first time participating in this meeting and in this panel. I cannot start without saying 2 words. We, the Arabs, we are peaceful people, and we are people of peace. We cannot do anything but condemn any terrorism coming from state or any other organization, and give the support to the peaceful people dying in the situation that we are seeing in Gaza. Now to speak about talking about decarbonization, I would like to say that Suez Steel was maybe one of the pioneers by choosing the zero reformer technology in 2008, when no one was talking about decarbonization. The reason behind choosing the zero reformer was only to be able to use H2 in the process. And this was taken in 2008. Now, to come to the reality, in my opinion, in the H2 production, we are still at the stage compared to the computer when it was 386 or 486, not even with the new processors. And in my opinion, it will be prematurated to start this production at this stage because it would be a burden on any industry to invest such big money before being sure that this technology is the right technology to be chosen. Because this will impact the cost on years to come. But here in the Middle East, we have other solutions. This is the only place where the steel industry is very near to the oil well, where we can make carbon capturing and store it under the ground. We have green power, which will enable us to switch from normal gas-originated power to green power, which will reduce our carbon footprint without using the hydrogen even. The hydrogen should be at a later stage with a gradual increase, because investing one time in the start technology will be a mistake in my opinion. We at Suez Steel, we are committed to reduce our carbon footprint. We are working now on doing that and on switching to green electrical power, which will reduce by 35 to 40% within the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ravi.
Thank you, Raju. Thank you for inviting us for our comments here. We are at SULB, we are running at about 1.12 emissions per ton of crude steel, which is much lower than our baseline of 1.3. So we are quite comfortable that with the improvements in the operations, we'll definitely be able to achieve 30% reduction by 2035, which is the Bahrain national goals. In addition to that, as all of the panelists have reiterated, last 1 year or rather, I would say 6 months, has seen a lot of push on the green steel area. In Bahrain, I can see that there is an increased push for supply of green electricity by having government farms elsewhere. I can see that there is a renewed push for carbon capture and storage. These are the two major areas of focus. The problem from the industry point of view, as we see, is if we go for green hydrogen, we have our processes. Thankfully, in the GCC, most of our steel iron making is the DRI, gas-based DRI, and the steel making is EAF, which are supposed to be the future technologies for green steel. The problem, as we see, is if we go for green hydrogen production today, the cost is, even in GCC, which is the best insulation place in the whole world, it'll be around $2.50 per kg of hydrogen, which means you are talking of a differential cost of production of almost $140. In addition to that, you have more than $1 billion investment for the electrolyzers and the solar panels. So if you look at the totality, you're talking of more than $250, $260 per ton differential cost of production. So unless there is a policy support, which means a carbon tax, which can absorb that, the transition from the industry commercial point of view would be a little more difficult. Compared to that, as Rafiq was saying, carbon capture and storage is cheaper in this region. The way we see it, probably the cost would be around $120, $130. So if we can, that would probably be the first stage. And later on, as the green hydrogen production improves, both electrolyzers and solar cells in efficiency, then I think we'll see the transition moving towards green hydrogen, which is more sustainable and more long-term.
Okay, so I mean, I think just listening to all of you there, lots of different initiatives, but similar themes. One of the key themes there is about the cost of the technologies. And actually, Harsha, you mentioned carbon capture. You just talked about carbon capture. And I know Jindal have been talking a lot about their efficiencies that they are creating. And I think you recently stated, you said it now as well, you also said it at the Gulf event that you spoke at a couple of weeks ago, you talked about your ability to cut the cost of production and carbon capture by up to 50%. So how are you doing this? And is that going to be technology that's going to be widely adopted in the region? And just give us a bit more insight into those comments you made around carbon capture technology, because obviously one of the issues will be which technology will provide the most cost efficiencies. Will it be green hydrogen or will it be carbon capture?
Yes, I think it's the first question, which is more efficient, whether it's green hydrogen or carbon capture. I believe if we really want to bring down the scope 3 from 2.3 to 0.6, that's what the Europeans consider as green steel, then it cannot happen by carbon capture alone. It has to be a combination of both green hydrogen and carbon capture. Yes, there are challenges to green hydrogen, but these are the challenges which, like even in your current technologies, as per our technology providers, up to 30% green hydrogen can be used directly. But with green hydrogen ready technologies, the ramp up to 100% is possible. But the bigger challenge there is that the round the clock renewable power. So that is one thing which most of the projects are trying to solve. But even without the round the clock, you can still significantly increase the green hydrogen usage instead of natural gas, and you can reduce the carbon footprint by more than half. That's one thing. Two, yes, we spoke about the economics. Let's say, but in my view, if Middle East cannot produce green hydrogen, very few regions in the world can. There are only the Nordic countries, there is the Southern Europe, there is the MENA region. In the MENA region, the solar intensity is in the top 6 in the world. The wind velocities are comparable in some of the zones, comparable very close to Netherlands. And you have vast tracts of land which are uninhabited and non-agricultural. And you have abundant coastline which you can use through desalination for your electrolyzer. I mean, and the governments here are extremely proactive. For example, if I talk of the Oman government, they already have a separate body for green hydrogen, Hydrom, with a task to produce 1 million tons of green hydrogen. So the ecosystem in which we are in is a best business case for green steel production. And if we can't start it today, by 2030, I don't think the world can see green steel. Yes, today it's 2.5 kgs, but it can, over a period in time, the same we saw with the computer technology. With every passing year, I believe the costs are going to go down, and this 2.5 kgs, even if it's at around 2 kgs, or even at 2.5 kgs, if the cost is, the variable cost is $140, and the premiums, what I hear, are in excess of $250 per ton, and in some case up to 300 euros per ton. And look at the consumer side. This is hardly 1% of the cost. If you're talking about a cost of a car, the cost of green steel components in the car would be less than $350. Or you talk about a washing machine, it's less than $16, $15 per washing machine. So we have looked at the use cases from the consumer standpoint, and even in a wind tower, it's less than 1% of the LCOE. So there is a definite business case for green steel. Costs may be high, but there is also a return on the projects with the right marketing, because the demand is the big inspiration. And CCUS, we believe, is just to reduce the carbon footprint further down from, say, wherever we reach because of the renewable energy. So if it is 0.6, there are a few customers who are demanding 0.3 in Europe. And so I would say that, yes, if you ask about our technology, we are trying to reduce, it's a pilot project which intends to reduce by 50%. It's with an American technology, and we would say that we would keep our fingers crossed, but we are just trying to spread our eggs in different baskets and or rather fire the cannons in different directions, but to ensure that these two approaches, that's green hydrogen and CCUS, together should deliver the reduction in the carbon footprint.
Okay, that's lots of themes you've just wrapped into that. So I'm going to open it up. Does any panelists want to respond to anything that's been said there by Harsha?
Maybe I could.
Sure.
Actually, we in MSCL have the talking about 90% of the steel making is basically the copper furnace, which gives it the advantage anyways. That's number one. Number two is what energy we can use, and just to piggyback on what Harsha has said. The Middle East has advantage compared to anywhere in the world. There is an abundant sources of let's say, renewable energies in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, and other MENA regions. And this also gives us the advantage to basically take out carbon and basically store it compared to anywhere in the world. If you look at the USA, maybe they have an advantage. Actually, the Middle East has really advantage in terms of CCUS and CS. That's really important. And then hopefully with time, we will basically adopt the technology to basically give us the advantage in terms of hydrogen. We've seen a lot of developments in this region to basically make the hydrogens, and we've seen different colors. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the colors of hydrogen, but at least for now, this region has demonstrated that they are pioneering also the hydrogen production, and that will give the steel makers the advantage to even go to zero. Yeah.
Great. I mean, again, I'll keep it open, but I want to hone in on one particular point, which is, you're right, this region is blessed with great resources, and one of those resources is also abundant low-cost gas, and therefore, will the economics of green hydrogen ever make sense when you can, perhaps the real opportunity is use the abundant low-cost gas and use carbon capture storage as the real route towards green steel? Open that to any other of the panelists who want to comment? Sure. Rewant, yes.
Thank you. So just to further add to that, as I mentioned, different colors of hydrogen. I think blue hydrogen will play a very important role in the region, given the abundance of gas, given the ability to use and store that carbon as well. And so really with blue hydrogen, being able to bridge the gap at a much more cost-effective manner for a period of time until green hydrogen is available, that is a true potential within the Middle East, in my view. And that is really why it is very important that as we think about our investment plans, we are designing them to really cater to different optionality as the world evolves and as technologies evolve. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think when we talk of green premiums, they're mostly driven by auto segment. Green premiums in steel are currently driven by the auto consumers. I have not yet seen green premium coming up in construction, and construction accounts for a lot of steel which is produced in the GCC. So that is something where the government policy needs to still come in, because per square meter we have about 325 kg of CO2 emissions in construction. Now, is the government willing to make it zero? That is what is going to drive, and the steel intensity in construction is much higher than the steel intensity in auto. So that is an important criteria. So policy has to come in. Secondly, there's a lot of confusion on what is green steel. That needs to get resolved at some point in time. Because as you pointed out, and some others have pointed out, there are variations in terms of what is the quantum of emissions for green steel. There is a strong push that green steel should be defined by the process and not by the absolute numbers. And there's a third aspect where people say green steel should be left to the regional blocks to decide whether they want to make it green or not. So there's a lot of confusion on this topic, and the biggest elephant in the room when we talk of green steel is the government's willingness, and this is global governments. Are they willing to accept the inflation, which is going to be the consequence of green commodities in the market? We sometimes forget that although steel may be only about 2% of the global GDP in terms of production, it affects 10% of the global GDP. That's almost $9 trillion of goods and services will be affected by the cost impact of steel. And this is going to be even higher when you get into aluminum and others. Because steel is still probably is the largest metal in the world. So there are these issues which...
So I think that's, again, some really good points, lots of which let's get further into. Before we move on, I want to just go to Rafik. I mean, obviously, I just made that comment now about CCUS and natural gas, but actually Egypt is definitely one of the leaders on hydrogen in terms of 10 hydrogen projects currently underway. So what is your view on terms of the role of hydrogen and what it will play in steelmaking?
Yes, but before talking about Egypt, I would like to say that in the MENA region, if we combine cheap gas with possibility of carbon capturing and storage, with cheap wind and solar energy, then we can reach what is needed according to the rules without even using hydrogen. So this
But
is...
won't the cheap renewable solar be the route to cheap hydrogen?
Yeah, but you can use it as electrical power as well, and then capture the carbon. So there is two ways. In my opinion, the MENA is blessed with all this combined together, which will make it the cheapest place to be with zero emission. But in the same time, working on hydrogen is a need, and we have all to work on it. But as I said before, we have to develop the technology, and this will take time. It cannot come immediately. This technology that we have now, it's not proven that this is the best technology and the cheapest technology. So we have to look forward on that. In the same case, I don't want to look political, but we have to know also that the MENA region is not the reason behind this climate change. The industrial countries were benefiting from that possibility for 100 years. And now we are all requested to be at the same level while someone did the bad job and someone was not doing it during the 100 years. And now we are all equal. In my opinion, in the rules and the laws, there should be some fairness towards the countries that were in that 100 years developing themselves and not developed. The developed country created the problem where we are today, and they have to take the responsibility. We cannot be at equal stage together because we are really having this as a result of what they did, not us.
And how do you want to see that transpire in terms of policy or regulation?
In my opinion, they should give more time to the developing countries.
More time through
without putting this...
higher definitions for green steel, or
Yes, in a way. This doesn't mean that we will not commit to that, but we cannot be under pressure because someone else did a mistake. This has to be taken into consideration as well.
Okay. Any comments from anyone on the panel on that? Want to say something? Said?
Just to build on what my colleague Rafiq said, I think we've seen something called, and I think everyone, CBAM. And when you read about CBAM, and it's very much developed in Europe, they talk about basically carbon leakage, just to control it somehow, and to have a level play field, and that's back to my colleague Rafiq. So it makes sure that whoever is not, whoever is emitting more carbon, they will basically have to go through that CBAM regulations. In addition, you've seen that now countries are introducing carbon taxes, etc. And by doing that, and based on all the articles I've read, they say that they're going to use the money to basically inject it back into the industry and then develop the technology so that it doesn't emit carbon. So the intent is there somehow, but it will take time for CBAM to basically come into maturity. And again, if we look 2 years ago, CBAM was there. It was a very nice theme. Everyone talked about it. But it has been developing. It has been developing over the past 2 years, and yet it has to basically set measures. And again, back to my colleague Rafiq, it has to allow time for steelmakers to adjust and make sure that they grow, not to hamper their growth in terms of regulations, etc.
Okay, I mean, on that point, let's talk about CBAM. CBAM, of course, the European Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism. And I was wondering how the other panelists view CBAM. I mean, also from a perspective of the European consumer, who are your customers. How do they view CBAM, and do they truly see it as a mechanism through which investment will flow back into the industry, or do they see it really as a form of protectionism disguised with the ESG around it? Any comments on that?
Yeah, so if you, Raju, if you look at the global steel industry, it is more or less split in half. If you look at India and China, which are the number 1 and number 2 steel producers, the steel is mostly from blast furnaces, and which are pretty young blast furnaces, so they cannot be sacked so quickly. Whereas if you look at Europe and America, it's more of electric arc. It's been shifted into electric arc and using more of the scrap which is available. These are also countries which have got much more scrap available, historical scrap available. So to suddenly now bring in this carbon border adjustment mechanism definitely raises questions about the intent. It does not seem to be completely unbiased and without agenda. The other aspect is where the countries could have helped is why is the green hydrogen? Green hydrogen is the excellent source of power for steel industry. But why is the cost high? Because innovation has been poor in that sector. The electrodes still are either platinum or iridium, which are very scarce resources globally, and that pushes up the cost. So there has to be a lot of innovation, which the Europe and Americas can drive to utilize more commonly available metals for creating these electrodes and green hydrogen cells and the solar panels, so that the cost drives down, and once that happens, the whole world will shift to green hydrogen. So that is a human service that the developed world has to give to the rest of the humanity.
Good. I mean, let's maybe just evolve the discussion from green sort of energy sources to raw materials, since you touched on that. But let's talk about specifically, with all the new project plans for steel DRI capacity in the region, what's the perspective on the availability of key raw materials such as iron ore and the right form of iron ore and pellet, etc., within the region? So I don't know, Rewant, obviously with the big project being planned, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. So I think on the raw material side, this market is going to continue to evolve. As SR, we are in fact working on building a new 14 million ton pellet facility in India. This is for DR grade pellets as well as blast furnace grade pellets. But I think really within new areas, especially for example Africa, there is going to be and there has to be new mines that need to get opened and really produce and make the high quality iron ore that's required for DR grade steel making to be available. So I think this is going to evolve, and Africa and other places are going to see a lot more investment coming in just because of the pure need of the market.
Okay, and what about scrap as well, alongside iron ore? Anyone want to comment on scrap and how the use and utilization of scrap in the region is going to evolve? And will the Middle East perhaps follow Turkey's model on the use of scrap?
I will move to scrap, but first, substituting 76% of the world steel production coming from blast furnace into DRI or any other non-emission, it requires a different approach to beneficiation of iron ore. We will have a problem. We have to say it. With all these DRI capacities that are coming on stream now, we will have a problem with the high-grade iron ore. This we have to admit, this is coming, and we have to face it. If we don't find a different way of beneficiation or a different way of using low-grade iron ore in the direct reduction, we will face a problem. So this is a fact, and we have all to be aware of it, and this is coming. Now to move to scrap, with this scarcity in the high-grade iron ore, scrap will be also with high demand. People will not export scrap anymore because scrap is the lowest emission way of producing steel, and this is a recycling. So people will trend to keep the scrap in their countries and to use it locally. And knowing that in the Middle East and in the MENA region, the last 20 or 30 years, we were only investing in infrastructure, we know that infrastructure will not bring back scrap in the short term. Normally, what generates the scrap is more the engineering industries, like automotive and other industries. The infrastructure, the life of infrastructure is 70 and 100 years. So it will not generate scrap on the short term. So here in the MENA region, we will have a problem with scrap, and we will face also the problem of the high-grade iron ore. So we have to look at beneficiation. We have to look into the local possibilities in the iron ore and how to beneficiate them in order to use them in our industry. This will be the solution for that.
So, Syed, I'll allow you to comment on that, but also I want you to also comment on the fact that if you look at your competing industry of aluminium, they've been very efficient in securing the supply chains for raw materials that they need through Emirati investments in places like Guinea, etc., to secure bauxite supplies. So please comment on Rafiq's point, but also perhaps enlighten us on your thoughts on developing that supply chain.
Yeah, so before I comment on the scarcity of raw material in the future, we just need to realize that, you know, we only innovate when we are put under pressure. So it's very important for us now to know that what are we going to do about it? It's not going to be just everyone, we're not going to convert the whole world into direct reduction plants and electrical furnace. This is impossible. Now, when you look at the blast furnace technology, people are studying ways on how can they basically have the same blast furnaces and then emitting less carbon. So naturally, people will basically come up with solutions to decarbonize their value chain. In addition to the scarcity of raw material. Now, when you look at, just back into what you said, when you look at the securing raw material, it's evident that for us, dark reduction routes, we need to have security of raw materials, and that's back to what my colleague Rafiq said. And what we have done recently in Emirati Steel, we've announced that we're going to do a green hub iron making project in Abu Dhabi, and that will ensure that we basically look at the value chain from the raw material all the way to the consumers, and then supplying them with greener iron making. Now, when you look at the region today, it's like pockets today. You've got the high-end applications in developed countries like Europe, USA, and I think we're going to have that coming in this region. And when you look at the UAE has basically come up with 300 billion operations plan, which ensures that we diversify our GDP from oil and gas to industry. When you look at countries like Saudi Arabia, they're actually doing the same. So naturally, scrap will come, but it will take time, and that will develop the countries to basically have higher end applications. And this is where green steel is today. And it will come with time, hopefully.
And of course, we believe that, which is why we also believe that scrap is going to play a significant part in this region. And Fast Markets actually launched a domestic UAE scrap price in October, which again will help just drive transparency and flows there.
I think regarding scrap, one thing is clear that scrap is going to be increasingly regulated. Scrap is going to be increasingly regulated out of US and Europe, because this is going to be, I would say, a national wealth for any of the nations going ahead, because it has a lot of intrinsic value, not just for steel production, but also for the carbon footprint. So I guess we have to make do with plans which doesn't include scrap as the key pillars for our raw materials, and rather we need to secure raw materials. Mine to metal integration, I think, would hold the key going ahead for the Middle Eastern producers. And I fully agree with our colleagues here that that would be a major focus going ahead, because unlike our aluminum counterparts who have made investments in Northern Africa for securing bauxite, I think that would be the next way ahead for the steel industry.
Okay, I mean, we talked a bit about trade and trade flows of scrap and raw materials, but what about trade flows of the steel product itself? You know, I'm just curious to understand. Obviously, this region will continue to grow its steel production footprint, will be a hub for green steel, will emerge as an exporter for steel, but also looking at more global trends and structural shifts that I touched on in my opening remarks. We will see China play a big part, but also what role will India play? So maybe just anyone want to comment on some of the big trends we're going to see on steel trade flows in the coming years. And of course, one of the aspects are the Chinese reduction in consumption of steel will be replaced by an increase we're going to see in India, for example. Anyone want to comment on steel trade flows?
Yeah, I think the biggest trend, first of all, on the steel making, there will be three major routes which are going to be emerging. There will be scrap, which is the lowest hanging fruit. Gas-based DRI can go up to 200 to 300 million tons globally. And there is a lot of effort, as somebody has mentioned, on the change in the blast furnace from an open cycle to a closed cycle and make it almost like a DRI plant. If that happens, blast furnace will be as green as DRI plants. And then all this premium on scrap is going to vanish because these are all temporary premiums. Regarding major trends, I think the biggest trend globally is that the world's largest steel producer, which is China, is seeing a population decline, 1.3 to expected 0.8, 0.9 billion people, and that's going to be a secular reduction, a massive reduction in their steel consumption. And therefore, every region, including GCC, needs to take steps to prevent the import of all that material coming in and killing your industry. That's a very major thing that every block, every region would need to protect itself. Otherwise, the industry will die. The second, a few other major trends that are going to evolve are based on the carbon tax, which is going to be applied on various consumptions that human beings consume, whether it is automobiles or construction. If you increase carbon tax on construction, even at 325 kg, if you say at 100 euros, you're talking of 32 euro per square meter of construction tax. Now that's more than the cost of construction in most parts of the world. So you will see shifts happening in the nature of construction globally. Similarly, in terms of automobile mobility, if you see the cost of cars going up because the fuel prices have shot up, the modern electric vehicles are all much more costlier than the fuel-based vehicles. You will see that people will start shifting to alternate means of transportation, of mobility. So all those shifts are going to happen in society based on the carbon tax, which we need to be aware of.
But let's talk about that, because obviously the consumer, which has been touched upon earlier, is key. and how does all these shifts impact the consumer? What's the consumer willing to accept? I mean, I think you mentioned that steel only makes up 1% of the cost of the automobile, but it's not just steel. Every raw material, every conference for every other raw material will be talking about the same points. And if you add it all up on an aggregate basis, it adds up to a lot of extra cost. In a world where there is a cost of living crisis, where we have high inflation, is the consumer really going to accept the higher, incur and absorb the higher cost for green products, whether it's in construction for that $32 per square foot meter, or whether it's for their cars or their washing machines, as you mentioned?
I was having a conversation with one of the largest white goods manufacturer, and we were discussing about a business case for they converting their washing machine and refrigerators into green steel. Their perspective was that they had done the calculations, and they said if we convert this into completely green steel, the cost per washing machine, which used to be 700 euros, it's one of the premium ones, they calculated it to be less than 20 euros. And their focus was that even if we don't get the 20 euro premium, which is very unlikely for a 700 euro washing machine, if you can't get a 20 euro premium, it's quite unlikely. But they said even if they don't get it, in the crowded marketplace, if you have your washing machine, which is green washing machine, it's definitely has a higher chance of being sold first. And this has a high, and this would ensure that the capacity utilization, which is around 75, 78%, even if that goes to 90, 95%, their actual gain is in the increased capacity utilization, rather than just getting the premium which they have invested in the raw material. So this is the white goods part. Now coming to the an automobile, I mean, we have met, I mean, most of you have met a lot of automotive players, some of them may be here. you talk about a 50,000 euro or a 100,000 euro car, actually the incremental green steel cost is less than 350 euros or not more than 400 euros. So it's all about the positioning. You know, it's not just about using green steel and making a green steel based product. It's also about educating the consumer. It is making them make the choice, and you know, the extreme weather events which are happening are actually alarmingly bringing everyone's attention to this aspect. And there have been surveys conducted, very interestingly. Well-known, one of the big four consultancies made a survey of consumers on their propensity to choose green steel versus, green products versus non-green products. And it has been happening every 2 years. The last one was conducted in, last one was conducted in 2020, and the last one was conducted in 2022. In 2020, when the consumers were asked about their choice, not many of them were clear what is a green product, what is a sustainable product. When the same survey was conducted in 2022, there was a significant increase in the amount of consumers who chose green products. So the demand for sustainable products will continuously get updated on the higher side by 2030. So that is the big inspiration, what I feel. So
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else want to comment? Yes, Rafik?
Look, I like to be practical and give numbers. I think the biggest percentage of steel in goods that people use is in the buildings, where 10% of the building is steel. But if we take that, and we know per square meter we use between 30 and 40 kilograms, so on a 100 square meter apartment, we will use 4 tons. And with a $200 premium for green steel, this will affect the price of the apartment by $800. An apartment that will cost people $100,000 will be affected with $800, which is nothing. And so the real effect on the people or on the consumer is not that big. Now, how people will brand the green steel and how much they will like to take against that, this is another question. But the real effect is practically none.
Okay, clear. Did you want to say anything? No? Okay, the other part, we've talked a lot about carbon, which is one form of ESG. The other bit is also about sustainability. And I'd like to talk a little bit, just to change subject as we come to a close soon, is on social sustainability. And maybe one or two of you want to just comment specifically around what your companies are doing to drive social sustainability aspects, particularly around employment, let's say, in your organizations, alongside the focus on climate change. Do you want to comment?
Yeah, I can.
Please,
So
go ahead.
we are both in Saudi Arabia and in Bahrain. We have more than 50% localization. And that's how we are basically contributing to the local industry. And as far as sustainability is concerned, under pressure of green decarbonization, there's a lot of what is now colloquially called Industry 4.0 kind of initiatives, IoT, automation, correlations across the supply chain. A lot of effort is going there. New departments have been created to drive, to take out every ounce of the efficiency from the system, drive into the system. As far as governance is concerned, since we are more or less a semi-government organization, it's never a question. Our board of directors is very clear on the governance issues. So that's how we are driving ESG.
Okay, anybody else? Otherwise, maybe I'm mindful of the time as well. I want to cover a couple of points. First one is I want to talk about the industry and how the industry is future-proofing itself. We've talked a lot about manufacturing technology, but what about the other aspects? Artificial intelligence, digitization and operations. Anybody again want to comment on this aspect of how the market is, or your industry is evolving, or your companies are evolving from that?
So let me start with saying that actually this is the future. The two things, we spoke about decarbonization, and then the second one is digitalization, which is absolutely should be in the focus of everyone. mean, people would love to jump into machine learning and AI, but when you look at the steel industry, it's mainly consisting of engineers. And that's actually the problem today. Engineers don't like data a lot. They like to go fix a problem. And I think the mindset that we need to have in the future is, what are we going to do with the data we have today, first of all? How are we going to basically look at the data? What are we going to do with it? And then we can basically learn around machine learning, AI, etc. But that's going to be anyway the future. Because today, if you look at 50 years, I mean, I'm not 50 years old, but if you look at 50 years from today at least, you've seen a ridiculous amount of progress in technology. Ridiculous, ridiculous. And day by day is changing. Day by day is changing. So if we don't change ourselves, if we don't make digitization our focus, then we'll be behind, naturally. Look at all the technologies, blast furnaces. Now people are talking about CCUS. So if we're not technology verse, that's not gonna help. The good thing is in Emirates Steel Arkan, we've a year ago started our digitization journey, which is a complete transformation plan to ensure that we are adopting the latest technology, including AI, machine learning, etc. And we're basically taking very serious measures to ensure that we adopt it on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I think you've said it all for the panel. So I think I want to just bring the panel to a close by giving each of you the opportunity to take any of the aspects we've talked about and tell me from your perspective, and it's got to be an elevator pitch, so no longer than 30 seconds. So I want you all to tell me what you identify as the single biggest opportunity, either in the short term or the long term, for this industry in this region. So we'll go from left to right. So we'll start with you, Ravi.
As steel industry, there is nothing to worry because in 2022, out of 2.8 million tons of ore which was mined in metals, 2.6 was iron ore. So everything else that you see in metals is 0.2 million, is in that ratio. So steel industry is anyway going to be there. It is also far greener than some of the other alternate metals, whether you call aluminum, which is the nearest competitor to steel, or copper, which goes way down the road. So nothing is changing for steel industry, but that should not make us complacent. I think the big elephant in the room is the cost of energy generation. We are an energy intensive industry. If the cost of solar power comes down from something like $2 per megawatt today to $0.1 kind of a thing, you'll find all the rules of the game will change in the world.
Great, thank you. Rafik.
Thank you. So in this environment of decarbonization, digitization, and all what's coming in the steel industry, I see a big opportunity for the MENA region, having all the green power, the carbon storage, the cheap gas in one place. We have to look after our people. Our people shall stay the first on our priorities. We have to develop our working force. We have to teach them and to make them prepared for the future. We have to promote peace in our region. This is what will give us an opportunity to grow. We know 1,000 years ago, this region was one of the pioneers in everything, in science, in medicine, in everything, because we had peace. If this peace will return to this region will become again the first in the world.
Inshallah. Saeed.
Yeah, I think we should, I'm personally very optimistic, and a little bit pragmatic, I would say. I think we should just capitalize on what we have today. We are very fortunate to be in the Middle East, to be completely honest with you, very fortunate. We should just capitalize on that, build on it. I understand there's going to be an increase in cost, but usually at the start of anything, things just are not very clear. Over time, they become super clear, and I think everything will be absorbed as we speak. Everything will be balanced. Everything will come into equilibrium. So, very optimistic. We should just capitalize on the fact of the matter that we're here. We've got anyway a very cheap energy cost compared to anywhere in the world. We've got the latest technology, and then just to not say, okay, that's it, we should just go back and relax. We should just take it to the next level, up our game, make our industries much more resilient because today we live in a world full of uncertainties. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, actually. The day after, 1 week. 1 year ago, we were talking about something. 2 years ago, we were talking about something else. So we need to be much more resilient, much more stronger. We need to focus on the businesses and then grow on basically the processes, invest in people, and then that will make us much more ready for the future.
Thank you. Harsha.
Yes, apart from the industry trends, apart from business, I would see the biggest opportunity for the steel industry is how we attract young, brilliant talent who otherwise would be going to the tech fields or other apparently attractive fields. So that's the biggest opportunity for us. The second biggest opportunity would be how we can make a difference to the communities where we live in. Steel can build nations and it can build communities. I think that, women in steel is is a very wonderful thing that's being talked about here. And we ourselves are driving in Jindal Shadid Women of Steel campaign, and we have women on the shop floor, for Omani women on the shop floor. That's one of the first in the Omani industry. So I think these are one of the biggest opportunities in terms of community.
And I hope next year we have some women CEOs on this panel. In fact, I will set that as a challenge to our conference team to make sure we have that diversity up here. Rewant.
Thank you. So, climate change is real. The world is very, very focused on it. And I think, definitions, what is going to happen about green steel, CBAM, taxes, this is all going to continue to evolve and grow. Within the Middle East, we're blessed with, as you mentioned, low-cost energy, ability to do carbon capture, sequestration, all these great things, green energy. And we're also blessed with very, very progressive governments that are very, very focused on enabling and facilitating investment into the newest and greatest technologies. And so really, I think it's a responsibility that we can actually become the true leaders of green steel making for the world and really set the example of what is possible. And I think that is really what we are focused on, trying to see how to set that benchmark. Thank you.
Great. And with that, I want to thank all my excellent panelists. It was very interactive, and thank you for all your contributions. Also, thank you for your preparation, because I know you all prepared as well and put a lot of work into this in a very busy time for everyone. So thank you so much for your participation.